Have you ever wondered why so much of ancient Egypt, what scholars call Kemet, seems shrouded in secrecy for its own descendants? Picture it. Millennia. Old pyramids. Hieroglyphics full of wisdom. Yet the actual story is hidden behind a veil. This concealment wasn't accidental. European colonizers set out, systematically, to obscure Kemet's legacy from African populations. Now, you might be asking, why would they do this? The answer is layered, rooted in imperial policies and cultural narratives. Key terms like historical revisionism and epistemicide come into play here. Think of these as rewriting the script and erasing knowledge, but on a civilizational scale. Let me tell you a story. As a child, I flipped through textbooks. Pharaohs were depicted as alien, distant, almost statuesque, but Kemet's descendants? Barely a mention outside subtext. This opening sets the stage for a tale of power, denial, and the relentless quest for lost truth. Let's zoom in. Did you know that colonial administrators, from Napoleon's scholars to British Egyptologists, crafted their own versions of Kemet's past? They wielded historiographical control, shaping what gets remembered and what gets buried. This isn't just old-school censorship, it's like programming history's search engine to hide certain keywords. Imagine an African child in 1,890 seconds, Cairo asking, "Are those my ancestors?" The teachers, using imported textbooks, say, "No, those were not your people." The conflict? Colonizers needed to justify their rule. Portraying Kemet as disconnected from modern Africans made conquest seem less like theft and more like rescue. And so Europeans rewrote not just stories but identities. Have you heard of scientific racism? In the 19th century, this pseudo-discipline used phrenology and craniometry, think measuring skulls with calipers, to argue Africans couldn't possibly have built the pyramids. Now you might be thinking, surely no one believed this. But path-breaking Egyptologist Flinders Petrie, did he classified mummies by race, downplaying any sub-Saharan links. Imagine the emotional fallout for Kemet's descendants, told for generations that their ancestors were mere laborers, never the architects. The resolution? Today, genetics and linguistic evidence are blowing these old theories out of the water, reconnecting the Nile Valley to its broader African context. But the legacy of that erasure still lingers in textbooks and museums worldwide. Let's talk treasures. The Rosetta Stone, the bust of Nefertiti. Why do these icons reside in European museums? This is cultural appropriation at its most literal, artifact extraction. Picture a house stripped of family photos, leaving just faded memories behind. Colonizers knew whoever controls the artifacts controls the narrative. By exporting these relics, they created a physical and psychological distance between Kemet and its descendants. Many Egyptians, Sudanese, and Nubians grew up unable to access their own heritage. How do you reclaim a history locked in foreign vaults? The fight for repatriation rages on. But each returned artifact is a piece of memory restored. Here's a twist. The knowledge to read hieroglyphs wasn't just lost. It was deliberately withheld. Jean-François Champollion cracks the Rosetta Stone, but the findings are published in French and Latin, not Arabic, Coptic, or Nubian. Technical term: linguistic gatekeeping. It's like having the password but never sharing it with the real account holder. Imagine being told, "This is your heritage," but all the manuals are in a foreign tongue. The setup? Knowledge is power. The conflict? Who gets to wield it? The resolution? Today, grassroots movements are training new generations to read the glyphs and rewrite the story themselves. Language, after all, is the key to memory. Have you noticed how Kemet is often portrayed as a lost civilization, a set of ruins disconnected from any living community? This is the myth of civilizational discontinuity. In reality, traditions, beliefs, and even names live on in the people of modern Egypt, Nubia, and the broader Nile Valley. Colonial powers preferred to treat these lands as museums dead, silent, waiting for Europeans to interpret. Now you might be thinking, does the past really shape the present? Let me tell you, for Kemet's descendants, it's not just history, it's identity, pride, and belonging. The movement to reconnect past and present is more alive than ever. Let's not overlook internal forces after European colonization. Waves of Christianization and later Islamization also reshaped Kemet's story. Terms like syncretism, mixing old and new beliefs, and iconoclasm, destroying symbols, are key here. Imagine murals painted over, temples repurposed, even names changed. For centuries, official histories focused on newer faiths, treating older Kemetic traditions as pagan relics best forgotten. The conflict, a struggle over whose ancestors count. The resolution, modern spiritual revivals and cultural festivals are breathing new life into ancient practices. History in the end is a palimpsest layer on layer, never truly erased. Who comes to mind when you think of Cleopatra or Tutankhamun? If your image comes from blockbuster films, you're not alone. This is cultural miscasting, casting white or non-African actors in African roles. It's like swapping the program notes, so the orchestra plays the wrong symphony. Now you might ask, does fiction really matter? Absolutely. For millions, movies and comics are their first history lesson. Stereotypes reinforce the idea that Kemet's glory was somehow un-African. That's not just a Hollywood problem, it's an identity crisis in real time. But as African creators reclaim the narrative, the script is finally flipping. Here's a classroom scene. The teacher asks, "Name 3 pharaohs." But the curriculum skips over African contributions, focusing on Greek and Roman influences instead. This is curricular bias when schools teach a version of history filtered through colonial eyes. Pedagogical silencing is another term. Imagine erasing whole chapters from the book of memory. You may be wondering, how does this impact self-esteem? Well, if you're taught your ancestors didn't matter, how can you dream big? The setup: a generation hungry for roots. The conflict: a system built to keep them shallow. The resolution: new curricula and Afrocentric academies are reshaping what's possible. Education, ultimately, is the passport to cultural liberation. Even in darkness, seeds of resistance sprouted. From Cheikh Anta Diop to contemporary Nubian activists, voices have challenged the colonial script. Terms like Afrocentrism, centering Africa in history, and cultural restitution, returning what was stolen, are battle cries in this ongoing struggle. Let me tell you a story. In Senegal, school children learn Kemet's math and science as their birthright, not someone else's legend. The conflict: global resistance from institutions invested in the old narrative. The resolution: every published book, every repatriated relic, chips away at the wall of silence. This renaissance is fueled by pride, scholarship, and an unbreakable thirst for truth. Now let's fast forward. Social media, open source archives, and digital storytelling have become the new battlegrounds for Kemetic history. Terms like crowdsourced history, where anyone can add to the record, and digital restitution, sharing artifacts online, are game changers. Imagine a young woman in Ghana, decoding ancient texts on her smartphone, connecting dots scholars missed for centuries. Still, there's conflict. Digital divides and algorithmic bias can reinforce old inequalities. But with every new podcast, video, and online archive, Another piece of Kemet's true legacy comes home. So where do we go from here? The rediscovery of Kemet isn't just academic, it's healing. Terms like cultural resilience and historical reclamation describe a process that's as spiritual as it is scholarly. Picture communities in Egypt and Sudan, reviving Nile festivals, teaching Medu Neter the ancient language to children, and celebrating their ancestors as visionaries, not shadows. Now, you might ask, isn't this just nostalgia? Not at all. It's the foundation for new dreams, new art, and new futures rooted in centuries-old wisdom. As we close, remember, history isn't what happened. It's what's remembered. And who gets to remember it? The time for silence is over.